Hi, my name is Louis A. DeCaro Jr., and I'm a John Brown biographer. And I have been studying John Brown for over 20 years, and I've written extensively about his life. And I'd like to make an initial response to The Good Lord Bird, a series that is now showing on SHOWTIME. It is a production of Ethan Hawke, who's also starring as John Brown, and it is adapted from the James McBride novel of the same name that came out in 2013. I'd like to say up front that I'm not anti-artist, and I don't consider either McBride or Hawke to be intellectual enemies. I think that they are standing on the right side of the story. They appreciate John Brown's commitment to justice, his opposition to injustice, his commitment to slavery to the point of dying for it. This is a far cry, for instance, from Raymond Massey in Santa Fe Trail in 1940, which gave to the popular culture of the United States the image of John Brown as a madman in a screenplay written by a Virginian that actually glorified uh, what would be the future leaders of the Confederacy, the rebels like Robert E. Lee and Jeb Stuart. So, Santa Fe Trail, which was a work of fiction, for instance, having John Brown speaking on the gallows at the end of Santa Fe Trail, that didn't happen. John Brown was not allowed to speak. He did not speak. Um, and so, but that gave a negative view of John Brown. The Good Lord Bird is a positive view of John Brown, but it's a sideways approach, and it's disturbing to me, and I think it's disturbing to even artists who have intended to convey the story artistically, but to preserve a measure of regard for John Brown, the man who lived. I've been studying John Brown a long time, and I can tell you that the way Ethan Hawke is portraying John Brown, and probably I don't read historical fiction, so I don't know really what McBride has written, but certainly the way Ethan Hawke is portraying John Brown is far from who John Brown was. John Brown was not a raving lunatic. I mean, I think really right off the bat, there's a close up of John Brown with, he's got drool coming from his mouth, and he's ranting and raving, and he's saving an onion, an old dried up onion that he thinks is some kind of a fetish or charm. And he's at one point he's talking to a rabbit and asking the rabbit if the rabbit believes in justice. He looks like he is just coming apart at the seams. He's dirty. He's confused. He's interestingly enough, he doesn't know his Bible when in fact John Brown knew his Bible with almost encyclopedic uh, precision. Um, he's just crazy, and I think this is precisely what Ethan Hawke wants to do. Is he wants to show John Brown as crazy. Now, I understand that this is the treatment of a caricature. I understand that artists are trying to do something a little differently than biographers are. The problem I have with this is that, for the most part, the public and really the majority of it's really white society, but this also includes many blacks, have more or less gotten their view of John Brown in the last, the better part of a century from cinema rather than from history. Um, so we had this crazy John Brown figure from 1940. We had some historians who also reinforced this because they didn't like Brown. We have historians today who don't like Brown. These are usually the people that oppose the 1619 Project, the people who hate Howard Zinn, the people who essentially are critical of anyone who's critical of the history of the United States. And since John Brown called this nation a slave nation, and since he attacked slavery, and since even the so-called heroes like Lincoln thought he was an extremist and thought he was delusional, they have reinforced that. So in the 21st century, we had some breakthroughs. We had some progress. We had historians like David Reynolds and Evan Carton and myself writing about John Brown, and other grassroots scholars and other writers and other musicians and artists who have done a good job of trying to move us toward a more positive historical historically sound appreciation of John Brown. And now we have this. Now we have we go from having a bad crazy man in 1940, Raymond Massey, Santa Fe Trail, to the good Lord Bird with a good crazy, with a raving lunatic who talks to rabbits, who seems to rely simply on luck. Ethan Hawke seems to think that John Brown was shot all the time and he kept surviving. The reality is John Brown was never shot, but once he was shot. He was hit by some buckshot in a battle in Kansas. It hit him in the back. Yes, he did experience. He spoke many times that bullets whizzed right by him and so on and so forth. But the point is that he was undaunted by that. He didn't become increasingly committed to the idea that God was on his side because he lived. He was committed for years to opposing slavery. But at the end of the day, this is not John Brown, and this is my concern: is that the people in our society tend to get their sense of history. If they're readers, what I notice is that they would rather read a work of fiction than they would a biography. So, you had Cloud Splitter in 1998 by Russell Banks. And then you had James McBride in 2013 gives birth to this movie in 2020. A lot of people are going to get their sense of who John Brown was historically. They're going to get their sense of who John Brown was from fiction and from movies or TV in this case. They're not going to, so this is what they're going to embrace as history. And I know artists say, well, this is art. And so artists have their way, yes, but most people are not going to watch The Good Lord Bird and be appreciative of the idea of art and what art is doing. They are going to look at this and they're going to come away from watching The Good Lord Bird saying, oh, that's what John Brown was like. He was crazy. He was crazy, but he was a good crazy. So, and that's what's going to happen to the man. That's what's going to happen to the man in the popular opinion of the nation. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong, but I'm concerned about this. And so I'm concerned about what I saw in the first episode. As I said, I'm going to try to watch the full series. I have friends and associates who won't watch it because they just feel like it's a waste of time. I'm going to watch it to try to appreciate where I can. Perhaps I'm going to find some redemption in this approach toward the end of the series. But I will say from the first that I'm disappointed. Ethan Hawke is a wonderful actor, but honestly, I think Ethan Hawke, I think he did something here that I don't think he looks like he really tried to understand who John Brown was. He doesn't try to in any way convey who John Brown is. It's comedy, but it's a kind of a reckless treatment. And I think Douglas appears. I haven't seen Douglas yet in the series, obviously, but I've seen the trailers. And Douglas looks like he's impetuous. He looks like he certainly has no respect for John Brown, which is far from the historical record. I think in this story they have Frederick Douglass calling John Brown a lunatic under his breath. These are things that matter because whether artists want to admit it or not, they're influencing historical perception. So the onus is on them, I think, to negotiate art and history because historians can't make TV shows. Actors and producers make TV shows. And so the onus is on them to respect history and respect people that they say they respect, not to abuse them and try to squeeze out some happy moral or happy truth at the end. So I know that, for instance, James McBride said this, that he did not like following the lead of historians. He viewed them as the kind of person who says, take your medicine. And he resented that. And so he wanted to use comedy as a means of telling the truth. And Ethan Hawke picks up on the same notion. Ethan Hawke said in an interview, he doesn't want to give you the John Brown that you'll find in the library. So then the question is, whose John Brown are you conveying? You're conveying a John Brown of your own making. Why is this even about John Brown? Why don't you just make up a fictional story about a guy in the West who fought against slavery? And we can all say, oh, that reminds us of John Brown. But the reality is that what they've done is kind of push back against history, and they have come up with this I think, claim that history is sort of like Mary Poppins, a little spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, a spoonful of humor helps history go down. No, it doesn't, especially if you're not really conveying the truth. Certainly, the killing of that figure, the man in Kansas, is not what happened. The whole context, and this has been always a problem because people are always calling John Brown a terrorist, and we have yet to see a reasonable representation of the political and social circumstances that surrounded the killings of Potawatomi, which was essentially a preemptive strike, a counter-terrorist strike, a response to when you didn't have an appeal to law and order. This is what John Brown had to face. But John Brown was not this this kind of dirty faced, mangy looking, spittle from his mouth, crazy man. This is not John Brown. This is not the man who lived. And so I hope that those of you who are watching The Good Lord Bird will not take this for history. If you want to take it for fun, for amusement, if you want to appreciate the artist and what the artist does, well, go for it. I will too. I'll watch it as amusement. I'll try to bracket some of my most critical feelings and appreciate it for what it is. But I can tell you, this ain't John Brown. Okay, so have a good day.